Revolutionary Age of Andrew Jackson. This is an interesting book because it discusses topics that I never really even considered to research or to have an interest about. Apparently, Andrew Jackson created his own sort of age, and that is exactly what this book seeks to highlight. So, shall we begin? The first page talks about what the book is about. The author, Robert V. Remini, starts off by saying, "It was a raucous time of duels with words and swords. The 50-year period between the War of 1812 and the Civil War, called the Age of Jackson. It was, in its own special way, a time of revolution. People weren't killing each other and mobs did not riot in the streets. But enormous changes were shaking and transforming America, and a generation of political geniuses appeared, though to wrestle with the nation's prospects and with each other. Who were the men? Andrew Jackson, Daniel Webster, Henry Clay, John C. Calhoun, Martin Van Buren. And what were the issues? How to make America truly democratic, how to hold the Union together when slavery was threatening to tear it apart, what to do with the Indians, who seemed to many to stand out in the way of America's westward destiny, and probably most important to us today, how to solve the fierce power struggle between the President and the Congress. The Revolutionary Age of Andrew Jackson changed much of America's way of life. It established the nation's basic political practices and patterns. It stands at the beginning of the modern America we have inherited." Changing pages. This book was copyrighted in 1976 and printed in 1977, therefore makes it a classic. The book is split into 3 books. Book 1, A New Age, starting from page 9 to page 57. Book 2, starting from page 69 on to 100. And then book 3, 115 to 164. Page 9, A New Age. Chapter 1, A Changing Society. The nation was in the midst of a profound revolution when Andrew Jackson entered the White House on March 4th, 1829, as the 7th President of the United States. It was not a violent revolution. People weren't killing one another. No mobs rioted through the streets to vent their rage. Nevertheless, momentous changes were occurring throughout the country. Changes that transformed American society and government. Indeed, it is not an exaggeration to say that many of the characteristics commonly thought of today as being typically American developed during this revolutionary era. Historians call it the Age of Jackson, and think of it as the period in American history roughly bridging the years from the end of the War of 1812 to the coming of the Civil War in 1861. But whatever the title and however it is called. It was an age of change, an age of innovation, an age of reform. The United States was only 40 years old at the time of Jackson's election to the presidency, when the nation began in 1789 as a republic under the Constitution. It had a small population of a few million people occupying 13 states strung along the Atlantic seaboard. Its society had been confined all along the coastline for more than 150 years since colonialization. First began, the Appalachian Mountains served as the barrier to the west, but also provided protection against the terrors of the vast wilderness that stretched beyond during the entire colonial period of American history. Settlers had hardly moved more than a few hundred miles inland from the Atlantic shore. Most colonists were farmers and lived in small communities in which there was close contact. The ties of family, church, and community were strong and produced a sense of security and belonging. It was a closely knit society and relatively stable. Some even thought there was some overcrowding. With the conclusion of the American Revolution, a genuine westward movement began. Then, starting early in the 19th century, the country burst its narrow confines. Within a few decades of the nation's most converted, from an isolated agrarian society squeezed between ocean and mountains into a dynamic industrial society sprawled across a 3,000-mile continent. Gone were the old ties of family, church, and community. Gone, too, was the security they provided. A people so long hemmed in by a mountain chain scrambled over it and raced across the fertile valleys on the other side, reaching the Mississippi and fording it, clearing the land and creating new states in the process. It had taken nearly 2 centuries for Americans to occupy a ribbon of land hardly more than 100 miles in width. During the next 60 years, they would go the rest of the distance across the continent to the Pacific Ocean. Nearly 3,000 miles, a tiny rural nation struggling to maintain its existence became a continental power whose future greatness was now assured. In the 40 years from the adoption of the Constitution to the inauguration of President Jackson, the 13 states had grown to 24. In the South and Southwest, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri had been added to the Union. Farther north, Maine, Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois had achieved statehood. The admission of Missouri during the 1820s was particularly significant. Not only did it provoke an open controversy over slavery, which was resolved by the Missouri Compromise that retained a balance in the Union between free and slave states, but Missouri was the first state to lay totally west of the Mississippi River to enter the Union. It marked a great stride in westward expansion. But geographically, expansion was not the only change produced in this revolutionary age. There were social, psychological, economic, and political changes that influenced the history not only of the United States, but of the entire Western world. American society itself has changed. It was different. Everyone could see that. Our age is wholly of a different character from the past, said Senator Daniel Webster of Massachusetts. Society is full of excitement. Foreign visitors instantly noticed this excitement when they talked with people. The spirit was contagious. It was the spirit of go ahead. The whole continent presents a scene of scrambling and roars with a greedy hurry, observed by an Englishman. Go ahead is the order of the day. More than that, go Jacksonian age. But precisely what did that mean? Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. For individuals, it meant the consuming need to make money. There was a restless, striving desire to be better off, and this was the ambition of all classes of society. None expected, no man in America is contented to be poor, or expects to continue so, stated one magazine of the time. Americans believed that in Europe, children were lucky if they could maintain the station and income of their parents, lucky if they did not slide to a lower social financial condition. Not so in America. In America, it was expected that children would improve their station, make more money than their parents, get a higher paying job, find a better life. That's what Go Ahead was all about. So the sons took off. They vaulted over the mountains, seeking to satisfy their ambitious yearning in the West. They wanted something better than a slice of small inheritance, and they believed that they could find it away from home, somewhere hardly into their teenage years, when they bid farewell to their families to search for that better life. There was only one way to describe them: restless, 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 searching, 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 driving, driving, driving. By the time of Jackson's inauguration in 1828, it was the prevailing mood of the country.